Why, good morning, Bear Nation. Let's do the brief. Bear Independent brief. Best words, tremendous. Bear Independent brief, 9MAR22. If the continuous sanctions are any indication, we're gonna eat this cow rather than go to the grocery store. However, it also appears that inflation is only about to get worse. The likelihood of the US and the globe heading into a recession is increasing daily. Even before the full consequences of the political action hit, Bear nationals are already reporting skyrocketing prices for fertilizer, wheat, and other agricultural products. Anecdotal data, my wife and I both went to the grocery store the other day. I needed to pick up a few things, she needed to pick up a few things, and between the two of us, we spent $770 at the grocery store. What the WTF, bro? And we didn't get anything luxurious. I got some meat, a little bit of meat, and some milk and stuff. Yeah, and she did her regular, grocery shopping for a house with 3 kids in it. And between the two of us, $770 at the grocery store. So, yeah. It's going to be eating cow's time here pretty quick. Russia has proposed the halting of fertilizer exports, saying, quote, the country is a major low-cost exporter of many kind of crop nutrients, end quote, wrote the Farm Policy News. I wanted to talk about this real quick. So Russia's not putting out fertilizer, or they're talking about an outright ban on fertilizer exports, keeping that within the country. Well, fertilizer is used to grow what? Food, right? And food can be weaponized. We talk about this all the time. Food can be weaponized. And so it very likely will become weaponized. And so one of the things I wanted to touch on for y'all that, even if you're in the suburbs, right? You're not out here, start composting. Please start composting, okay? Please start composting. You can grow so much food, good food, without any chemicals, just by composting. And it's not very difficult to do. You can get composting bins. You can make a compost pile in your backyard. We were able to, myself and my family, were able to grow 40% of our food in our suburban backyard in North Texas. 40% of our food with compost, because of compost. And so kind of like the backyard suburban trifecta for permaculture is chickens, a few laying hens, compost, and raised beds. And if you can get those 3 things going, I'm encouraging you strongly to get those 3 things going, okay? Like today, get on it today. Because food prices are only gonna go up. Fertilizer is only gonna go up. And contributing to food prices is fuel, right? Which we're gonna talk about now. The White House has just banned oil, LNG, liquefied natural gas, and coal imports from Russia. President Biden made the announcement on yesterday, saying, quote, Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. Since Putin began his military buildup on the Ukrainian borders, and with this action, it's going to go up further. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home in coordination with our partners. Americans have rallied to support the Ukrainian people and made it clear we will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war, end quote. Now, let's forget the fact that gas prices were already skyrocketing under the Biden administration prior to the Ukrainian conflict. Let's forget the fact that the Keystone XL pipeline was shut down while Nord Stream 2 was approved. Let's forget all of that and just blame this crisis on the most convenient scapegoat we have, the Ukrainian war over here. Let's forget the fact that the Bidens are intimately involved in Ukraine, and that the puppet state that has been set up in Ukraine with a literal actor as the president of Ukraine, which, by the way, everybody is just, 100% on board to support the Ukrainians. You have an actor who was installed as a politician by the Obama regime there, playing his part perfectly. Playing his part perfectly. And the people who are reporting, air quote, on this are the same people for the last 2 years that have been telling you that if you don't do this thing, you're gonna die and the world's gonna end. And now all of a sudden we believe him on this Ukraine thing, but we didn't believe him for the last 2 years. Get outside of the paradigm people. Step outside of their stupid game that they're playing, okay? But fuel prices are gonna go up. And not everything, but I think it's statistically like 95 to 98% of everything you touch in your daily life was on a semi-truck at some point. Yes, and Anna Powell is correct. Biden is planning an executive order on cryptocurrency, which is why for years people have said, Bear, how come you won't get into crypto? Because if I can't touch it, I don't count it as wealth. And that should say a lot about where I'm at and perhaps where you should be at. If I can't touch it, I don't count it as wealth. It's just ones and zeros on a computer. Doesn't seem very secure to me. Morning, Arkansas, living. Biden also said, quote, the United States produces far more oil domestically than all of Europe and all the European countries combined. So we can take this step when others cannot, but we are working closely with Europe and our partners to develop a long-term strategy to reduce their dependence on Russian energy as well, end quote. In other words, the U.S. will be unfurling its wings in the global oil and gas markets. Excuse me, under the Democrats? I find this incredible. You see, it's the largesse of the Petro Dollar and the oil and gas industry that creates the good times that we've experienced, that allows the social liberalism to exist, that creates the constituency for the Democrats to be able to say, we have to do away with oil and gas. We need to have renewables. And as somebody who's been deeply invested in renewables for a long time, longer than I've known my wife, a long time, renewables are not primary generation. They can't be. We don't have the capacitor technology. We don't have a way to store all of the power that you can make from the sun with solar panels or from the wind with wind turbines. We don't have a way to store it. So it's not on-demand generation, unlike our primary generation, which is nuclear, coal, and natural gas in the United States of America. That's on-demand primary generation. But see, the Democrats, the liberals, have pushed for renewable energy for a long time. A long time they've been pushing for it as primary generation. It doesn't work that way. And you can't have it as primary generation without the largesse in society that exists because of the oil and gas industry, regardless of whether or not the oil and gas industry is a primary polluter, regardless of like coal, right? Like coal miner's daughter said, yeah, coal. Mountaintop removal of coal is tragic and I hate it, but clean coal technology works, right? So, could we be better with fossil fuels? Absolutely. Are renewables going to save us? Absolutely not. And now all of a sudden we have the Democrats, because the economy's in the tank. Look at this, the economy's in the tank. What do we know how to do, how to fix this? You see, the Fed has been wondering about quantitative easing and the purchasing of our debt. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to start a war in Ukraine, right? Business as usual. And we're going to exacerbate supply chain issues with our enemy, our arch nemesis, Russia, so that's going to spike the price of oil. And the United States dollar is a petrodollar. It's tied to the price of oil. And so that should hopefully strengthen the value of the dollar, which would limit inflation. It's all the same moves, people. But it illustrates, A, the duplicity of their messaging, right? They're all about renewable energy until it's the petrodollar that's going to save their ass, right? And also, look at how fragile the system is. You guys got to get out of the system. You have to be away from the system. That building is on fire and it might collapse. It doesn't matter how nice your apartment is inside of the building. The building is on fire and it might collapse. Okay? GTFO. Move to the exits. Exit the building. In other words, the U.S. will be unfurling its wings in the global oil and gas markets. The ultimate result of that should be a strengthening of the petrodollar and the U.S. economy. Given America's current position, this may be a very necessary move. Even Elon Musk has tweeted, quote, hate to say it, but we need to increase oil and gas output immediately. Extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures. Yeah, and Elon's kind of a smart guy. He might actually be a robot, but he's kind of a smart guy. Ordinary people are the ones who end up paying the price for sanctions, and there may be even more sanctions on the way. India is in a tight spot between Russia and the US. It has defense deals with Russia, and it has abstained multiple times from voting to criticize Russia's recent actions. CATSA, or the, what's with the acronyms, by the way? Diplo speak and Mill speak. Everything has to be an acronym. Charlie, Alpha, Alpha, Tango, Sierra, Alpha. The Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act calls for the U.S. to levy sanctions against India. While the White House has not taken such action at the time of this writing, it is possible that even more sanctions could be rolling out in the future, ultimately further burdening the pocketbooks of ordinary people. Now, if you're on Patreon, you've got the links to this. If you're not on Patreon, you don't. But you can go to patreon.com, search for Bear Independent. It's $5 a month. I guarantee you it's $5 well spent. Somebody said, what breed are those? Those are Zebu cattle right there. We love you back, Mark O'Connor. Cot lumber. So here's the deal with India. That's an interesting development because India has military agreements with Russia, but India and China aren't getting along. Dare I say, they might hate each other. And Russia and China are trying to be friendly. And now, because of India's friendship with Russia, or I wouldn't say it's a friendship, but at least a mutual tolerance of one another, because India and Russia have some trade deals going on and military aid deals going on, the United States is wondering, should they sanction India? Well, India has a 5.1 million person defense force between its army, its paramilitary, and its reserves. 5 million people. That's greater than the Chinese Communist Party's army of 4 million people in China, and greater than the United States. The United States has 1.3 million active, then the reserves. And it's interesting if you look at the tables that quantify military forces. The United States doesn't count paramilitary. I think it's because the United States paramilitary isn't in support of the government. Hi, that's us. We don't like you. But they don't count the United States paramilitary. But between 1.3 active and 0.8 million reservists, you've got 2.1 in the United States. You've got 4 million in China, 5.3 in India. Interesting, huh? We really don't want to pick a war with India. Well, all their stuff's old technology. Well, quantity has a quality all of its own. So I don't think it's wise that we pick a fight with India. So you should be composting because fertilizer is going to become even more difficult to get, which means food is going to get more difficult to get. And when you combine that with the scarcity of fuel and diesel exhaust fluid, it's going to go way up and you may not actually be able to get your hands on it. So start growing your own food. Start taking responsibility for that now. I have a bunch of videos on composting. The internet is a thing. You can go to a search bar and type in words and hit a button and you'll get search results, man. And it'll tell you how to compost. So you should totally be doing that. I would also start auditing your life. What is it that I use on a regular basis that comes from somewhere else off of a ship? And will I be able to get that in a half a year from now? And if the answer to that is no, start stockpiling, baby, or figuring out how to do without. Do I think we're on the verge of imminent collapse and or World War III? Currently as it stands, no. Subject to change at any moment, but currently as it stands, no. Imminent collapse, no. World War III, maybe. That's possible. But we'll see what happens with that. But you still have time. That's the thing. So you need to be acting now while you have time to act. While you have room to maneuver, you need to be maneuvering right now to do these things. Because I really don't think it's time to dabble anymore with preparedness. So, and we're going to read part of one article from RT today. The U.S. is waging economic war on Russia, says the Kremlin. The U.S. State Department named strategic defeat for Putin as the endgame in Ukraine conflict. The U.S. is waging an economic war against Russia, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told the press on Wednesday. Quote, the U.S. has certainly declared economic war on Russia, and they are waging this war. Yes, de facto they are. Now, again, be aware here. The Kremlin spokesperson is saying. So Russia, right? Russia, the Kremlin. Their spokesperson is saying the U.S. is waging war against them. Look at the rhetoric here. Okay, be aware of what their messaging is. Look at the rhetoric. They're saying this is an act of war. You'd be careful with that. Also, remember, the Russians have a lot of ships in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And NATO has 3 carrier strike groups in the Med. And the Straits of Turkey, I forget what the hell they're called, but there's some straits that run through Turkey. That's how you get from the Sea of Azov to the Black Sea, back out to the Med. If the United States / NATO blockades the exit, the movement of those ships from that area, a blockade is an act of war. That's something to be paying attention to as well. They could call it a quarantine. Quarantine's not an act of war, much like the Bay of Pigs Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, the naval blockade that went up from the United States and Russia, that was not, the United States naval blockade was not a blockade, because a blockade would be an act of war. It was a quarantine of the island, right? So watch the messaging, look at the rhetoric here. His comments, Peskov, as far as the U.S. declaring economic war on Russia, referred to a statement made by a U.S. State Department's Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, who said on Tuesday that, quote, from the U.S. perspective, the end game is the strategic defeat of President Putin in this adventure, the war in Ukraine. End quote. Also on Tuesday, U.S. President Joe Biden banned all imports of Russian oil and gas, admitting that the decision was not without cost at home, but taken in close consultation with allies. Western nations have imposed several rounds of unprecedented sanctions against Russia, effectively cutting off the country from the international financial system. And listen, I want you guys to get this part. Let this sink in. Effectively cutting off the country from the international financial system, freezing the assets of the central bank. Right? You got your money in banks, you got your money in a crypto wallet, freezing the assets of the central bank, and thus restricting its ability to access most of the $630 billion in reserves needed to support the domestic economy and currency. The Russian ruble has lost nearly 50% of its value since the war in Ukraine began 2 weeks ago. If that's not inflation, I don't know what is. And that's going to do it for the brief today. You guys know you can see us at refugemedical.com. Your promo code is Bear Nation. Get your free shipping on all of our handmade, made in America, guaranteed forever first aid kits. I told you guys, if you've been watching the briefs, you know about supply chains. North American Rescue and TACMED are 30 to 60 days out on fulfillment. We put in a massive order the end of last week to be able to fulfill your orders. And so if you want kits, get them now. Just being straight up honest with you. If you want kits, get them now. Refugemedical.com. Handmade, made in America, guaranteed forever. If you use the components of that kit to save somebody's life, we replace them at no cost to you. And you can't find a better kit? I challenge you to find a better kit. So, yeah, I put my neck out on the line and ordered a metric F ton of equipment for y'all so that you could still have access to it. How long it's going to last, I have no idea. So, get it while you can. Same thing with Refuge Training. You can use promo code BearNation at refugetraining.com for 5% off any of the class dates at refugetraining.com. We travel the country. There's, I think, like 14 or 16 dates up there right now. Waco, Texas. We will be seeing you in Waco, Texas. I will be there. Carl from Tactical Rifleman will be there. Stalwart Peacekeeper will be there. Twitch will be there. Several of us will be there at the Waco class. And so come on out to the Waco class if you're in Waco, Texas, or near. If you're within a half a day's drive of Waco, come on over. If you're like, well, I'm in San Antonio, I really don't know if I want to go to Waco. Suck it up, Buttercup. See you in Waco. We've also got Sentinel Butte, North Dakota with Rex and Scott from Saws. Borosaurus Rex up there, that class in Sentinel Butte, North Dakota, coming up in June, I believe it is. So check that out. And then Philadelphia, listen, if you're in the Northeast, you know, New England or the East Coast, the farthest north and the farthest east that I am coming ever is Philadelphia. The reason for that is I'm not going to come to New Jersey, where this makes me a felon. Okay, I'm not gonna come to New York. I'm not gonna nothing. Are you coming to California? No, I'm not. We have some Oregon classes coming though, so stay tuned for that. Refugetraining.com, check all of that out. And so if you're on the East Coast or in the Northeast, Philly is your class, man. Philly is your class. Refugetraining.com, promo code BearNation gets you 5% off any class in the store. And then refugemedical.com, BearNation gets you free shipping on everything in the store. Thank you for supporting our American small businesses. Thank you for looking at my beautiful cow, Lemonade, the Zebu right here. I guess she's a heifer, technically. She's not a cow. But I can't wait to eat her babies. And I would encourage y'all to just keep doing the things, man. Get spun up. If you've been sitting on the fence like, man, I don't know if I should. Yes, you should. It is time. It is time to get serious about this stuff because the world is getting less predictable, not more predictable. Supply chains are becoming more fragile, not less fragile. Our leadership is more weak than ever, not stronger than ever. And the system doesn't care about you. The system doesn't care about me. The system doesn't care. The system has been skewed for years and years and years, decades, to enrich those at the top, the political class. The Republicans and the Democrats, they don't care about you. You're not even on their radar, except to the extent that they can skew your beliefs and garner your support so that you will allow them to perpetuate their own corruption so they can extract capital from the system. System ain't for you. It's for them. So you got to build your own system. Get busy, Bear Nation. Bless y'all. Shalom.